Welcome today to another episode of Diagnostic Guru. I love interviewing strong women who operate with a purpose, and today's Diagnostic Guru is no exception. Jodi Neuhauser is a force in the consumer health space with over 19 years of experience building and scaling B2B and B2C consumer healthcare brands across healthcare, travel, consumer products, and media. Jodi is known for being able to utilize consumer insights to design and build technology from the ground up. A three-time VC-backed founder in women's health, Jodi is currently building In Women's Health, the first careers platform for women's health. She's also a board member, angel investor, public speaker, and community leader, and was recognized as the top 10 inspiring healthcare entrepreneur to watch in 2023 by Entrepreneur. Whew, I get tired just reading this, Jodi. We are so excited to have you today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I absolutely love you and all of the amazing work you've done in this ecosystem. It's all super important for making sure that we have the data that we need in order to move our whole ecosystem in women's health forward. So glad to join you today.
Well, thank you for that. And we're going to dig in more into your women's health, how much I love that organization, how fun that's been. But really what I love to do is start with the good. And I think it's really important to also elevate, our successes because we sometimes suck at that as women. We seem to not want to share that. So I really like to start each episode with a question is, what are you most proud of in your career to date?
Oh my gosh, that's such a big question. I'm gonna chop it down in terms of what am I most proud of over the course of the last couple of years. And I think for me, it's frankly the work that we did as an ecosystem with the Bipartisan Women's Health PAC last summer. So we started about this time last year, realizing that we were really losing the influence battle in Washington. There are hundreds of millions of dollars of lobbying dollars that are spent to influence and elect candidates in Washington at all levels, frankly. And women's health was coming to the table with less than $2 million of spend. And there really wasn't, a large sort of ecosystem-wide organization that was working at it in a bipartisan way. So came together with my two co-founders, Liz Powell and Candace McDonald, and really the ecosystem totally rallied around us, payers, providers, women who aren't even in the ecosystem but are passionate about women's health. And over the course of last summer, we were able to raise a significant amount of capital and support 16 candidates in the last federal election cycle. And 11 of them got elected, and one is now the Secretary of Labor. So I think I'm most proud of the work that we did to not only get those candidates elected and build those relationships for the long term, but frankly, the work that we did to bring the whole ecosystem together to make this happen.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a really good statistic. 11 out of 12, and one is actually at a cabinet
Mhm.
position.
One of the things I love about women's health and working in the political realm is that, we all have a shared experience. I think in too many instances, women's health and even the word women's health or the phrase women's health, certainly on certain sides of the aisle has been very politicized. And that politicization is actually dividing us as women, where, for the most part, we have a very shared and similar experience. We all will go through menopause. We all start menstruating. A lot of us will go through a fertility journey. A lot of us will go through a pregnancy journey. And so we have these shared experiences of potentially being gaslit or ignored by our provider, or not having enough research to understand what's happening in our body from a cardiovascular level because we present differently as women. And so we have this shared experience. And I really do feel like women's health and in the political realm in particular, it is a way for us to heal some of the divide that we have in this country right now, especially within women.
Oh, we could talk for hours just about that.
For sure, for sure. I think there's lots of opportunity there if we take it. And given everything, even with everything going on right now in the political realm, I do think that there are opportunities for us to continue to move things forward, even under this administration.
Well, that's good. I love the positivity and the forward thinking. So let's
Mhm.
then talk a little bit about this newer organization that you formed, which I'm actually a member of on the Slack
Mhm.
channel, the Slack community that you put together called In Women's Health. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What does it do, and how does it differ a little bit from the PAC organization with the political side?
Yeah, so In Women's Health is actually my third women's health company, and it really was born kind of accidentally out of my experience of being a women's health founder. And I think most women's health founders and yourself as a women's health executive probably have a similar experience where people reach out to you every day, literally on LinkedIn, and say, "Can I have 15 minutes of your time? I would love to learn more about your career or how to get into women's health." And the reality is, we all can't spend 15 minutes with everybody. And this was, one of my kind of banes of my existence in terms of being a founder is I really wanted to spend time with everyone who reached out to me. And there wasn't a platform for me to send them to say, hey, this is where to go to get started, to break into women's health if you want to make a career pivot or start your career in women's health. Or for people to say, hey, here's where to go to accelerate your career in women's health. You're currently working in women's health and you want to get your next job or get your next promotion. And there certainly wasn't a platform for people to go and understand a lot of the educational nuances around the specifics of the business of women's health. So often in some of my previous roles, I would hire people with healthcare experience into our women's health organizations. And then I would find myself having to continue to reteach them about specific nuances about women's health, whether it was reimbursement, whether it was payer provider structures, whether it was how care was delivered, whether it was how things were marketed, from a social media or an acquisition standpoint. And so I said, this is crazy that, why are all of myself and my founder friends kind of having to teach everybody the same thing? Why don't we have one platform, one location, one group of people that is essentially educating the entire ecosystem? Because if we can take all of that duplication out of our ecosystem, then we can all go faster. So that's essentially what we have built within Women's Health. It's the largest career development and acceleration platform for women women and men who want to work in the women's health ecosystem. And think of it a little bit like LinkedIn meets Slack meets Masterclass meets Netflix. So, recommendation content or content recommendation engines based on these are webinars or these are lessons that we think you might want to learn based on where you are in your women's health journey from experts like yourself, Leslie, and others. And then also here are the people that we think that, would be great for you to get connected to and build a relationship with that might be able to help you accelerate your career. So.
Well, I think it's absolutely amazing organization for me. As you know, working in women's health, but I've kind of come and gone a little bit over the years. So I actually, as you know, joined your little mini MBA program, and it was great. I mean, the content that you cover and the specificity is all just sort of grouped into one. For people who don't work in that space, it's literally a crash course of what you need to know. So I highly recommend it, even though I knew most of it, but I still learned a lot, right? Because we can't remember everything and there's so much to learn. You had a recent LinkedIn post. You explained how to take a personal health journey and turn into a successful job pitch, which we just sort of touched upon.
Yeah.
And understanding how to translate, I think what was important is learning how to translate these experiences into business terms.
Mhm.
So that's really important for women in particular. Can you kind of dig into that a little bit further?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people started asking me when I first started this company, should I be talking about my own health journey? Is this a safe place to be talking about my own health journey? And they would also come to me and say, I am so passionate about fertility or I'm so passionate about menopause. And the reality is, the average women's health job right now is getting about 3,000 applications in the first 48 to 72 hours. And so, anecdotally, I don't have any data to support this, but at the end of the day, if you look at a percentage basis, I believe that getting a job in women's health is harder right now than getting a job in finance, just because of sort of the number of roles that are out there. And so when I talk to women about their passion, I'm like, don't downplay your passion, but that's not what's going to get you in the door. Just because you show up and you're passionate about menopause or you're passionate about fertility, that's a table stakes right at this point in terms of working in this industry. And so what I really encourage anyone who wants to work in the women's health space who has their own women's health journey or caregiving journey, right? I think we can expand it. It doesn't have to be your own sort of personal health journey. Maybe you took care of someone, but putting that story into a business mindset and a business framework. Because, in women's health, your own story is data, right? And a lot of times your own story in an organization like this can be the blueprint for the solution that they're potentially looking for. And so I really believe that personal health journeys, they're not liabilities, they're actually leadership assets. And so we need to be able to talk about those on your resume in a way that demonstrates your ability to think about a journey or an experience in business terms. And so, for example, I use fertility a lot of times as an example here. If someone went through a fertility journey and they saw six different providers. They worked with three different insurance companies. They managed, 40 to 50 to 60 injections or more. They spent $100,000. They, worked with a bunch of different insurance companies. All of those pieces of data are actually really important. And so instead of going in and saying, I'm an IVF mom, you should hire me, right? Going in and being able to talk about, I've been through an IVF journey and here's what my IVF journey looked like. It was this many providers, this many injections, this much budget, right? This many experiences from a medication standpoint shows your financial chops, your operational chops, your ability to manage, cross-functional teams, your ability to project manage a something that's going on for you. And so that's what I think is really important. If you have your own health journey or caregiving journey, it's really important to bring that out on your resume in a way that shows your business, that you can tie it to business results.
I think that's brilliant because it also makes people feel more comfortable,
Mhm.
in that situation when they're trying to show value and bringing them to the institution. But at the same time, a lot, as you know, a lot of the great ideas that came out in women's health companies is because of somebody's personal experience or personal journey. And if you know that journey, then you're going to help the business better optimize that journey better than any,
100%. A hundred
right?
percent. And yeah, that's why I say it's the blueprint for the solution, right? So being
Yeah.
able to show that you have been on that journey, but doing it in a way that demonstrates all of these other sort of hard and soft skills, which are really needed in business versus I had an IVF journey and, I'm an IVF mom or whatever your kind of more passion soft approach might be. Soft approaches aren't working right now, not when there's 3,000 applicants.
No, you got to
You've got to be
stand
able to
on.
bring that business chops to the table.
All right. So everyone listening, learn from that. Use your personal journeys to help in business. So I think that's a
Mhm.
great value add. And with that, how about you can talk about just because from your experience and also just with all the women that you talk to in your community, what are some of the biggest challenges that women leaders are facing today?
I think there's a number of different things that women are leaders and others, right, are facing. I think looking at this idea of having to do it all, I think is really challenging. How do we manage everything that we have going on in our life? I think fundraising for women, a lot has been talked about that, and I think I've had my own journey having raised more than $100 million in my career of, what that looks like and some of the specific challenges we face as female entrepreneurs. But I think what I see the most is women not taking care of themselves the most. And I think, and to me, this is almost an epidemic, and I can speak from the heart in my own personal experience here, right? I know that when I'm not taking care of myself, my business suffers, my family suffers, my health suffers. I'm not as productive, I'm not as focused. And so I see women kind of coming to us at In Women's Health, and they're trying to work full-time jobs and be moms and get a new job and do all these things. And sometimes some of the first questions I ask them is, when's the last time you just didn't do anything for a day? Or when's the last time you slept in? Or when's the last time you went on vacation? And I have a best friend, and my husband and my mom are all great people for me who just remind me every now and then that I need to take a break. And so I think self-care for us right now as women needs to be a very high priority, especially given everything that's going on.
Oh, I've lived that one all too well. To
To-
the
Totally. I think I like to say that burnout doesn't build billion-dollar companies. One of the tricks I've recently started to do over the last 6 months or so is I now book my meetings from the end of the day backwards. So
ah,
when I offer meetings, and this might not work for everybody, but when I offer meetings to people, it's like always start with, okay, 5:30, then 5, then 4:30, then 4, because what that ends up doing is that it ends up leaving like big blocks and chunks of time kind of in the morning and through the midday for me to get my own self-care in and my own sort of deep thinking work done. And then in the afternoon, when I'm kind of I'm ready for the day to be over, right? Then I can kind of jump on conversations, and those are a little bit easier and get the energy from the other person kind of on the call. So it's another hack to potentially think about for people.
I love that tip. All right, well, self-care and block your calendar for times of personal need, right? To give
Yeah.
yourself some self-care. Well, we talked about your one of your greatest achievements in the past couple of years is the work that you guys are doing with the Women's Health Pack, which I've been following and being trying to be involved as much as I can. It's really fascinating to me a lot of what you guys do there. And you really motivate a lot of other women like myself and others to take charge when it's not even part of their everyday, lives.
Mhm.
Why do you feel this is so important to get involved in politics right now, especially in this arena?
Good, really, really good question. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if we want better outcomes in women's health, we can't just build companies and we can't just ask governments to fund research because we see what's happening with that now. We have to build our own power and we have to kind of bring our own power to the table. And I think for a long time, women have said, "Hey, how can I get involved? How can I get involved? What can I do?" And the answer has really just been make sure you vote and call your senators, every now and then. And I think while that is still very important, please, everybody make sure you vote. And yes, do write letters to your senator and call your senator because they do matter. I think we are ready as an ecosystem and as women for kind of a lockstep change in an actual sort of representation of power. And if you look at the $31 trillion of economic value, which is going to be shifting hands from men to women, as our older generations die off, frankly, and women live longer than men, we are going to have some pretty significant economic power as women. And what we choose to do with that and how we choose to get involved, I think is going to be really important. And so again, we have to kind of build this locus of power. And if you look at other movements, how have they done it? How is the NRA so powerful? How is the AARP, for example, so powerful? And they basically harness the power of everyone within their movement who are passionate about whether it's gun rights or, 55 plus issues to essentially fund their own power in the ecosystem. And this is really now with the momentum that we've built through the Women's Health Pact, this is actually what we're working on for the kind of second half of this year and early next year is really building out this kind of structure of almost like the AARP for women's health, so that, $50, $100 at a time from every woman or, women who are out there, we are going to be able to come to the table with significantly more than $2 million to fund research, to fund innovation, to fund policy work, to fund candidates who are pro, lots of women's health issues, not abortion. So taking abortion sort of out of it. So I think it's really, really important for women to get value out of that too. So instead of just kind of making a donation to something, how can we create a model or a business model where value is exchanged on both sides? So we are solving a problem for you as a woman, and also, your dollars you're getting that value out of your dollars, but those dollars are also now being used to really fund really important things for us and make change at the systemic level.
I love the statements that you made around building power and coming together on this because, yeah, I think we've been at some of the similar talks. I can't remember who said it, and you would probably know the number because you're so good like that with numbers. But in this next generation of, the baby boomer generation, the majority of the women, right, are going to own all of the investment money,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
Because of your point of us living longer. And so that's why, us having that power to be able to put money in areas that are severely underfunded, especially in women's health, is incredibly important. So moving it at the political level makes perfect sense. Well, as you know, we like to talk about not just the good, but also the bad.
Yeah.
How about if you could just kind of frame for us in your experience, what is your one good, your one bad, and your one ugly in your career today?
I think good. We've talked about building in women's health, building the Women's Health Pack. I think, the fact that we're not just talking about change here, we're building the infrastructure to make it happen. And I think I'm really just excited about the fact that we have an ecosystem now that we are building ecosystem infrastructure for, right? That is a signal to me that our ecosystem is getting to a mature point where there are people asking for some of these ecosystem, and kind of infrastructure resources. So really excited about that and kind of where we're going as an entire sort of women's health ecosystem. I think bad. I worked in a few toxic environments. I think under some pretty toxic leaders. Kind of in my mid to late 20s and kind of early 30s. And I think my confidence there really, really took a hit, right? And it's probably taken 10 years, almost 8 to 10 years probably to kind of get the support I need to really rebuild that. But it's really made me passionate to start to create organizations and workplaces and help people find cultures where women don't have to shrink to survive, where we can really thrive. And that's, part of our work in women's health is to help people uncover some of those toxic environments. And again, to speak truth to power and to be really transparent and say, hey, we haven't heard some great things about that organization, or like you might want to just make sure you double click on that leader in our space and beyond, and just to help people understand kind of the situations that they're getting that they're getting into. And then I think the ugly is, for me, I talked about it, not prioritizing my own needs. And I think kind of in some of those toxic environments, I wasn't prioritizing my own needs. I pushed too hard. I tried to prove, because I felt like my worth was being questioned. I had to, try to push to prove my worth, prove my worth, not sleep. That now I'm like sleep deprived and made some decisions and kind of did some things maybe from more of an emotional place versus like actually being able to sort of think clearly. And I think that was really driven by ultimately, staying up and working until 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning and then sending an email at 4 in the morning that maybe I should have just like slept on and would have made a different decision or worded it in a different way or something like that. So, I think that that's where just having that self-awareness, going through a lot of the exercises, working with a therapist, a coach, an executive, leader, a mentor, kind of whatever works for you, to make sure that you are getting that, that support that's around you, and prioritizing your own needs.
Well, thank you for sharing that for us. It's too bad. It's such a misfortune that we have to go through, situations like that. I too had a very toxic situation. It definitely changed me entirely, like you. But I find that we wouldn't be where we are today, you and I having this conversation,
Yep.
if that, right? You're here, you are building a safe environment for women to come of all ages, experiences, all walks of life, right? Together. And same, this whole podcast is really to learn from others, and show that we're not alone in the room, and to
Mhm.
reach out to those that are here to help, because there are good ones.
If we think about these toxic environments, I think the most dangerous thing about them is really how they make you question your value. And then, you end up like way down here, and your value has gone from here to sort of here. And then you have to confidence isn't something you find. It's something you have to rebuild like brick by brick by brick by brick after it's been torn down. And I think you probably have had to go through that journey, and myself included. And now it's like, I want to help others sort of not have to go through that journey, or if they're in that situation, kind of hand them bricks as they're rebuilding their
Yeah,
wall,
that's
basically.
what I needed. Or oxygen mask.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Something,
Breathe.
something along those lines. Yeah.
We're coming to an end, unfortunately. I always enjoy talking to you. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
I believe all women have a superpower. What would you say it
hmm
is?
Bringing people together. So throughout my career, I've created value in bringing things together, whether it's products and services or assets or people or content, and opportunities. And I think that's what I'm doing here. And so just being able to say, bringing people together under a hood, having them connected, creating a community, but then also connecting one to one and saying, hey, Leslie, you should meet so and so you should meet Haley. And for example, those kind of making those kind of connections. So building creating value out of aggregation, I think, is one of my main superpowers.
I couldn't agree more. It's definitely something I've experienced with you. I've asked you to introduce me to somebody, or you organically do that, and you're really great. And also just your confidence in what you're doing is absolutely beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
I ask everybody to look into the In Women's Health Network if you're interested in getting into women's health, as well as the pack. There's a lot of
Yeah.
great stuff going on there.
We'd love to have you. We're in stealth right now with this membership model, but we'll be coming out, like I said, in kind of the fall, early winter. So stay tuned for that. But go to inwomenshealth.com or womenshealthpack.us if you're interested in either one of those organizations. We'd love to have you. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Jodi Neuhauser, and let me know if I can ever help.
Oh, thanks, Jody. Well, it's been an honor to speak with you today. Really love digging in with you, and I know we'll continue our conversation after this closes. So thank you so
No,
much
for
for
sure.
coming today. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.